All right, we're here with Don Berger, founder, VP and GM of Social Tables, now part of Cvent. Well, first of all,
still getting adjusted to not CEO.
Right. Well, for us, big fans, CEO as well.
Thank you.
But I think the first time we catch up officially after the big news last year of the acquisition, how things are going for Social Tables, first of all.
Overall, really good. It's selling a company is one of those things you don't know. Right. You don't know what you don't know. But the process, maybe I could just take a step back. The process was, there's two types of ways to sell a company: solicited and unsolicited. Solicited means you're running a process. You go and you got a banker. They're soliciting buyers. Unsolicited means you're just sitting around doing your thing, and then people come to you and say, hey, we're interested. And usually what happens is when it's unsolicited, it kicks off a very short solicitation to see if anybody else is interested before you get the letter, the LOI, the letter of intent. So it was an unsolicited offer. But it came from people who I've known for a really long time. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've known Reggie, Chuck, DQ, and Nitin and Mike Scaife from CorpDev for 5-6 years. Okay. And I remember meeting with Chuck Gora, the co-founder and president, in their office when I first started the company, because somebody had introduced me to them. And we had nothing more than a grid of tables and drag and drop seating. And it's pretty surreal to now be a part of this much larger organization that's almost bigger than life in this industry.
Unbelievable.
So overall it's going really well. So there's things that are out of our control a little bit. Like, for example, Cvent made a couple acquisitions over the past month, and so that means that integration for us is paused, is delayed. But overall, we've seen a tremendous response from the market. And the one surprising thing is that our employees, sure, some people have left because they don't want to be part. They want to be part of a smaller company. But our employees have gotten more opportunities they've ever gotten before.
Oh wow.
And they just don't know what they don't know. But they've never worked for a bigger company because we're 92% millennial. So they now understand what it's like to be part of a bigger organization. And the last thing I'll say is, Cvent has invested a tremendous amount of money into us and a tremendous amount of resources. Mm-hmm. I mean, the mere fact that Reggie's keynote started with a video of Social Tables during the general session is one example. We've hired 40 new people over the past 8 months. It's another example. They've embraced my leadership and brought me into the senior management team. That's another example. So it's been very welcoming in that way.
Fantastic, which is, I guess, all good news. I mean, knowing, I guess, the identity and personality that Social Tables had and has, it wasn't a given one, to be honest, because, it's, as you said, it was a niche company, a small company with a very strong identity. So it's great to hear that things are going great. Taking a step back, though, and, wanting to learn more about your story and how you got there. I guess what we're trying to do with these videos is also inspiring people that are starting out in event tech and want to follow the path of those that made it. What got you in events to begin with? How did you end up doing what you're doing?
There's something funny about events. So I'll make an observation and then I'll share my story. The observation, I don't have the answer for you why it's the case, but a lot of event tech companies are started by Israeli people. I don't know what it is.
All right.
But Bizzabo, All Seated, which is a competitor of ours, yep. Honeybook, Wedding Spot. Those are all Israeli CEOs and founders. So I don't know what it is. So the first statement I'll make is that I'm Israeli. So I think Israelis, Middle Eastern people were just kind of more social animals. So I think that's maybe a part of it. But for me, it's much more personal than that. I'm an immigrant. I came to this country. I didn't speak a word of English. And very early on, I had this level of social anxiety that I didn't know how to battle, how to combat. And I thought, well, what if I had an app that told me who was going to be at my table before I got to the event and sat down? And I thought, well, it was really cool if I can just see the seating chart and see the Facebook profiles and the LinkedIn information before I got there. So when I sit next to you, I can know, hey, you run this incredible event management blog, and I want to talk to you about that. And you're from Italy, and you immigrated to the United States, and whatever, you live in Las Vegas. And I can have a more compelling conversation than just like oh, where do you live? What do you do?
Of course.
So really, in a way, it was a very personal problem for me to struggle with that, having struggled with social anxiety as a result of being an immigrant. I don't know if you know, but I no longer have social anxiety. I'm pretty outgoing these days. But early
and probably
on,
the process helped you.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
It's very humbling to be an
Transformational.
entrepreneur. Yeah. So social anxiety made me create this event app to make events better, and then it kind of got a life of its own and started.
Was there a turning point for you for Social Tables? I mean, pre-acquisition that you said, if you had to pinpoint at the history of Social Tables, that's the point when things sort of changed. Can you think of one point that where you said, this is when we stepped up, this is where we scaled, this is when, we got serious, from a small company, just an idea, a bunch of people, we evolved into something, like a serious business?
I think it's probably a series of those milestones and turning points. I remember very vividly, we used to, for your small company, and you know this because you're an entrepreneur, it's like you do a lot of things together. You spend a lot of time together. And I remember we used to hang out a lot after work and whatever. I remember one time, it's like a year or two in, we went to a bar and we sat down at like a high boy, it was like a 6 top or an 8 top. And it was the first time where everybody around the table didn't have one conversation. And there was actually 2 conversations happening at the same time. So I realized we got to a point where we're so big, 8 people, 7 people, that we're having 2 conversations at the same time.
Incredible.
So that was to me like a point where I was like, oh wow, this thing is kind of like bigger than just a small team. So that was kind of like the realization point for me. But there were a couple other things I would probably say. One of them was very early on, we didn't have revenue goals. Mm-hmm. We had volume goals. So instead of saying we're going to close, $100,000 this month, we said we're going to close 100 customers. And that's how we incentivize salespeople. So salespeople weren't commissioned on the revenue they were bringing in, but they were commissioned on the volume of customers they were bringing in.
And why did you do that?
Because we wanted to grow like
that was it.
Gangbusters. We wanted to get as fast as possible into the hands of people. One mistake that we did, on the other hand, that prevented probably faster scale, was that we didn't think about product innovation quickly enough. And we were just constantly reinvesting in our core product. And that's why our diagramming version is like version 5 now, where we really should have been thinking about an innovation pipeline to build new product. Because to this day, Social Tables is synonymous with diagramming and seeding, when we really have, 3 other pretty incredible products that are representative together of about, 20% of our revenue.
Wow.
And surely the core diagramming product is still the thing, but we now have a sales and catering solution to compete with some of the kind of older, antiquated systems that exist in most hotels, and it's really one main player. And we have a marketing solution to help planners find space and look at space in new ways. So not thinking about product innovation and getting new products out the door was a big mistake.
All right. And I guess, obviously the big learnings in there as well are what made you today as well. But what I wanted to understand as well, I think Social Tables is a lot you as well. I mean, it's a great company made of great people and a great product, but there's a lot about you as well. And you're never, I mean, if you don't follow Don online, do follow him, because it's very valuable, informational, but also entertaining, and you're never afraid to speak your mind about what you think. How has that played out for you? Because, some of the things you say, sometimes I look at them, I'm like, wow, it takes guts to say something like that. I would never say something like that.
That's the filter.
Right? Oh, wow.
Imagine the unfiltered.
Oh, geez. So how do you see the personal branding, but also, speaking up, and sharing your story as you're doing during this interview as well. You're not afraid to be personal about what your journey is.
One of the things I was concerned about was when I sold the company, is would I still be able to have this authenticity online, because it's so important to me. And I just kind of say, fuck it. Because you know, I would rather be myself and like say what I want to say than doctor what I'm trying to say. My mom always taught me that if everybody likes you, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean, and I think nowadays, you know, employees, you know, in the workforce, people entering the workforce are looking for authentic leadership. They're looking for companies whose values they can relate to as if they're their own. And they have many choices out there. So they're, you know, we are more tribal, right? And that's like Seth Godin's new thing, is about tribes. So companies are tribes, and it's about like-minded people who share the same values. And you know, as you know, companies and organizations are in large part, a reflection of their founders. I think, you know, that's why Reggie's so special. I mean, he's been running, I think today is actually the 20th anniversary of Cvent. He's been running Cvent for 20 years.
Wow.
And 8 of the original, like, 14 guys are still there. And that's really inspirational. I can only think of a few, like Mark Zuckerberg is still at the helm, but he's getting a lot of, you know, all the bad press aside. But that's not that common, where not just a founder, but a founding team is still running the show. And that's been really inspirational to be there and watch that. Because when you're running a 100-person company like I was, you don't have a lot of inspiration on the inside in terms of leadership because you're at the top. Now, of course, you look for people and you get inspired by their creativity and whatnot, and you learn from them. But it's nice to have people around me who've done it for much longer I can learn from.
And obviously, authenticity and being direct is
Yeah.
part of it.
And that's Reggie's style. That's why Reggie and I, that's why this partnership has worked for many reasons, but it's a big part of it, because I think Reggie and I have a mutual level of respect. And during the acquisition process, I think we gained that for each other. I've always had it for him, but I didn't really get to know him at the level that I have in the past year. And it's his values are reflected in the 4,000 employees. I see that, and quite frankly, he does a much better job than I did. And I'm trying to study that and understand why. I don't know why.
Interesting. So learning experience right there.
Absolutely.
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, it's pretty humbling to be bought.
Absolutely. I'm going to wrap up. I mean, what we're trying to do as well is to inspire the next generation of event technology companies. Probably there's never been a more exciting time to join the bandwagon of event tech. You know, if you look at the level of investment that is being poured into companies and the level of acquisition, Cvent being the protagonist of that, obviously. What would you say? What would you recommend to someone that, you know, a geek in their room, or someone that is passionate about events and they're like having an insight, they're having that aha moment, and they're planning to build something for the industry? What would be the advice you give them today?
So I'm one of those people. I mean, I started out as a developer. I built the first version of Social Tables. If you are one of those people, great. If you're not and you're still thinking about event, I would say become that person, because I don't take CEOs who are not technical. I don't take seriously. If you can't speak technology, and at the very least, then you're just not going to be able to select a good team. So that's one thing. Second of all, and again, so that's number one, is be technical. Number two, I would say do it alone. A lot of people try to look for a business partner. A lot of people try to, you know, they're scared of doing it by themselves. I would say do it alone. And I think that's really important. That's actually a bit of it's somewhat counterintuitive to what the general kind of like thinking about entrepreneurship. We always hear about founding teams. But I think it's much better to start alone and then bring people on as you need them to complement what you have or what you have and you don't know you have, than to just be like, hey buddy, you want to start a company? Because that's much more likely to go bad. And I was really lucky with Trevor, for example, Trevor Lynn, who you know, I've elevated, so to speak, to co-founder, because he's not just been there for almost as long as I have, because he's been able to adjust over time, and my original co-founder, who I parted ways with very early on, was not. So number two would be go at it alone, and number three, look, events it's such a hard tech play, because it's still so manual. and it's still so nichey, right? You still, like, every event needs something different. Every event's a snowflake, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is that most event companies end up being very, very, very small and don't grow. So I would say try to focus on a small problem, but always work on the next thing so you can grow and not be relegated to just being like, you know, the audience response application for medical meetings.
Right.
Like,
So not too niche in the niche.
Exactly.
Like think more
Yeah.
diagonally,
Yeah.
horizontally, what's happening. And different
exactly.
touch
And I
points.
think there's a ton of opportunities, but events can be a real slog. So if you can get on the hospitality side and turn into a subscription business for hospitality suppliers, it's much easier, and that's what we did. When we first started, we were 80-20, even 100% event planners
Right.
revenue, 0% hotels, venues, etc. But we slowly switched because we just saw that it was much easier for us to sell to hotels and get them to be the change agents for planners.
Interesting. Lots to think about. Well done. Thanks very
Yeah,
much for
thank
your
you. Thank you
time
for the opportunity.
today, and congratulations on your
Thank
path.
you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.